whenever its use is truly warranted. And even more importantly, ridicule and demean people who abuse power, corrupt politicians, people who deserve it, not people who are just less fortunate or in a marginalized group.
Volunteer-powered community radio, WRWK, LP, Midlothian, and serving Chesterfield, Henrico, and Richmond.
And this is 5 o'clock on Thursday, and time to find our fit. It's a never-ending process. I hope you don't stop between shows, folks. Finding our fit is a constant thing. It's like walking down a road. You'll never get there, but the journey is worth it. The journey is worth it. And here to tell you more about the successful journey, two people who are on successful journeys themselves. And in fact, I'll turn it over to them. Susanna and Allie, you have the floor.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ron. You said it well. The journey never ends. Thank you for having us. My name is Allie Fisher, and I am here with my colleague, Dr. Susanna Calvert. We are both with the Foundation for Family and Community Healing, and the purpose of our show, Finding Our Fit, is to find our place in our chaotic and beautiful world, and in doing so, we will enrich our world and create a brighter future for everyone and everything, especially Earth. So I am typically a monthly guest host, and I have the joy today of being here with Susanna, who's typically the one holding down the fort and leading the show. So I'm excited to get to do this with her and spend the time. So as I mentioned, we're both with the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. I am the convener for growth, and Susanna is the convener for mission and vision and founder. Our mission there is to help everyone find our fit through mental, emotional, and relationship skill education. And you can check us out at healingedu.org. So we are here to try to make sense of our world so that we can choose to lean into that which makes us feel peaceful and grounded. Many of us tend to focus on the chaotic and overwhelming things in our lives, which is so easy to do, forgetting that the flip side has opportunities to find and create beauty and healing. And in Finding Our Fit, that's what we focus on. We focus on the flip side of our challenges, the beautiful side where we can learn and grow and become wiser and more resilient by adopting a healthier relationship with everyone and everything. It's important to choose both yin and yang to create balance and conditions for healing, and we have to choose that practice every day. So today we are talking about workplace solutions for engagement, which is a tricky topic that I think a lot of people are focused on right now. According to Gallup, only 36% of employees are engaged in the workplace, but a highly engaged workforce increases profitability by 21%. Folks are having trouble connecting with each other. The hybrid environment has exacerbated that. We've also been through a collective trauma with COVID and additional traumas that all of us are going through at a personal and societal level. 40% of people are thinking about leaving their jobs. There are rates of burnout that are incredibly high. And so lots of companies are focusing on their values and knowing that things need to change, but it can be really challenging to roll out any sort of program that is focused on employee engagement. And having that executive buy-in and sponsorship is really critical to success. Employees who are focused on engagement can be caught up in daily administrative tasks and have trouble making the time to focus on things like culture and engagement. And a little shout out to a gentleman named Don Ream, who has a wonderful TEDx talk where he talks about how important it is that we be engaged in the workplace, because that's where so much of us spend so much of our time, and that it's a really vital place to build community, connection, and relationships. and that our society is really impacted by how we engage in the workplace and whether or not we're fulfilled there and connected and feeling engaged. And disengagement has also been called presenteeism, which is basically when you're there, but you're not really there. I know I can relate to that feeling of being present in a place, but not really connecting with the work that I'm doing. And Harvard Business Review says that it costs about $1,000 per employee per year. So that is kind of the beast that we are tackling today. And so, Susanna, I wanted to ask you what concerns you about these trends and the lack of engagement in the workplace?
Well, first of all, hi, Allie and everybody. And it's so much fun to be not be the host for a change. And it's I always enjoy it, Allie, when you are acting as co-host or guest host for Finding Our Fit, and that the young adult perspective can be out front and center. So what is most concerning about these trends? Gosh, it's hard to know where to begin. I mean, at the most superficial level, obviously it has great impact on our economy. But on a much deeper level, I am worried about the hearts and souls of generations of workers.
Mm.
And I can't overstate that enough, because the other statistics that are out there is just that there's this incredible mental and emotional health crisis, and something like 1 in 5 adults are suffering from a mental illness, and the pervasiveness of depression and anxiety and loneliness and suicide are just unacceptably high. And I don't feel like these problems were created. They did not originate in workplaces, but they are being perpetuated in workplaces. Mm. And since we do spend so much time in the workplace, this is, I feel like, a very much a missed opportunity for employers to really step up and rise to the challenge and provide the workplace, the culture, the leadership that their community needs. To fail to do so is going to have profound repercussions, not only for our economy, but for the health and wellness of entire communities. Mm. And I just, it's hard to imagine us continuing on this trajectory, except to sense that it's just we're spiraling the drain, so to speak. And unless we change the trajectory, it's a question of when and not if. When and how, and not if. Mm-hmm. And so the opportunity here, I feel, is that the workplaces that are willing to acknowledge this as a real problem that is happening across our communities, across the world even, and who are willing to step up and say, we're going to do it differently. We're going to really foster our employee health and wellness and well-being, we want our employees to thrive, and that we do that in a way that's meaningful as opposed to lip service. And you know what I'm talking about there. That the organizations that really do that they live and breathe that, are going to be the ones that can attract employees, that can create or foster healthy employees, those that are engaged and productive. And those are the employees that will want to stay and commit their discretionary effort, which is really the definition of engagement, is the degree that an employee is willing to commit their discretionary effort, that they will be willing to do that for an organization that cares about them. So if an organization cares about them, then they will care about the organization to the best of their ability. But if they're struggling, their discretionary efforts just going to keep dropping. So taking a holistic approach to caring for employees is good for the employee and therefore is good for the organization and is good for the community and on and on. So that's how you can create an upward spiral instead of a downward one.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know we are definitely seeing lots of companies updating their mission and values statements, and that has not, from a lot of anecdotal evidence and also from survey evidence, it has not translated into an increase in engagement or what looks like substantial change. What do you think the substantial change would look like? What is the ideal way to support employees holistically in the workplace, taking into account that people are busy and feel like they don't have the time, energy, money to commit to this, even though it's been shown over and over again how important it is, and that in the end, there are returns on investment?
Yeah. Great questions. So it's not changing because people are paying lip service. And I'm not sure, I'm not so cynical to believe that that's intentional, that people have no intention of making these changes and they just say it. It's a complex problem. And our habits and our belief systems are in alignment to maintain the status quo. However, it's almost like doing more harm than good in one way, because by making a promise and then not fulfilling it, then you're now being a hypocrite. And I don't mean to sound judgmental in that, because it is also our nature to be hypocritical. So we all do that, but I feel like being aware of our tendency to be hypocritical is important so that we can reduce or at least own up to it. I think this is a great question. And I just remember there's this one comment I got when I was doing organizational learning work in the university. We were offering time management and, organizational skills. And somebody said to me, I don't have time to learn time management. And that sort of is like, to me, sums it up, that people go, I'm too stressed out and busy and broke to actually fix this problem. I'd rather just keep wasting money and effort into the current strategy that it has us spiraling the drain. So, what is human nature is that we wait until it's an absolute crisis, and then we're forced to change. So maybe you've lost your last most critical employee because you're not willing to face the needs of the workforce and your organization, and then you're forced to do that, to make those changes or go under. The alternative is that you just take a look at the reality and say, well, this is important enough because the viability of our organization depends on it, not to mention what the right thing is for your employees. So it does require a hard look at one's priorities, and to say, really, is what we're doing and the way we are doing it absolutely essential? And just because you've always done it that way doesn't necessarily mean that it makes sense in 2023. It's almost like you have to say, well, if I were to start from scratch and given today's economic and workforce realities, what would we do going forward? Not that people can make those changes right away, but you can start working towards them. I think another big hurdle, Allie, and I feel like this is entirely understandable, and I have great sympathy, really, for organizations that are facing this challenge because, let's face it, none of us have really been taught how to do this. Like the old school, and I didn't go to business school, so I'm just going to speak on what I've seen. Seems to be, you know, a top-down mentality that the management is smart and makes the decisions and tells everybody else what to do. And that worked in the old economy, but it doesn't work anymore. And so we have to really take a different approach where we can support people's not only their minds and their work abilities, like their ability to do the job from a cognitive perspective or a physical perspective, whatever is there, but also thinking about them as a complete human. Because if they're depressed or if they're angry or resentful, or if they're in conflict with each other, I don't know very many employers who doesn't understand how that can affect morale and therefore productivity. So folks already know that this is an issue, but in fairness, nobody knows how to really address this issue. And so I don't feel it's fair to expect people to know how to do it, but if there are resources available and they are not pursuing them because they don't have time to learn time management or whatever the equivalent of that is, I don't have time to improve the health and well-being of my employees. If they get stuck in that mindset, then things won't change. And maybe to their great regret down the road.
Yeah, that resonated. Not having time to learn time management, being too stressed to learn how to not be stressed, feeling too bad to learn how to not feel bad. And it sounds like such a logical fallacy, but it is so human.
It is so human. I have total sympathy and empathy for that. Yeah. But there are solutions and there is help, and not all of it has to break the bank.
So what does that look like as far as, how much time someone would spend in a day, say during the workday, on trying to support a more engaged culture and a culture that reflects the values that you're talking about, of looking at every individual as a whole person with a whole life, and that you don't, walk into the office or walk into the virtual office or walk into the wherever you work and take off your real human self and become a robot. What does that look like from a time perspective?
Well, there's no question that this takes time and effort. And because basically we have these habits, and I will go so far to call them bad habits, that have put us into this position and are keeping us stuck. So to change a habit, you have to be mindful of it and make the effort and time to change the habit. And so just think about how much time you spend trying to eat right or to exercise. I mean, that takes considerable effort, and just simply trying to have willpower is not enough. Most people who are successful in these life changes have to get some education and support and then attend to it every day. That being said, it doesn't have to take hours and hours, but the more time you invest in that change, the faster you can make the change. Because if you only want to spend, 5 minutes a week and you do so religiously, it could take a really long time to make that change. I urge people to think, well, one way to think about it as well is to consider this presenteeism and to assess, like, how productive are your employees really? Because if they're there for an 8-hour day, but they're only really productive for 2 or 3 hours, maybe they can find some time to do some of this work. There is more and more research to suggest that just looking at time is also not really the best way to view resources, but to really actually consider energy. So, in other words, how much energy does somebody have for a task? And if you have very low energy, but lots of time, it could take you hours and hours to do a task that could have otherwise taken, 15 minutes or an hour. And so I feel that we make the mistake of counting time. Okay, did you spend your 8 hours, as opposed to how energized were you for this work? Now, the thing is that humans are also kind of lazy. So our tendency is to just measure the thing that's easiest to measure. And so time is easy to measure, money is easy to measure. The number of widgets you make, or butts and seats, or whatever it is you're measuring, that's fairly easy to measure. And these more challenging, these more subtle and subjective variables like energy or engagement or passion or well-being are harder to measure. So I can also understand why we do that. But is it really serving us? And I feel like in the end it has backfired so much that we're measuring those easy metrics at the expense of the hearts and souls of our people. So it does take effort, and to avoid that hypocrisy we talked about earlier, it has to really start with the leadership. And if they're going to be all do as I do, not as I say, well, most of us have our teenage years are well behind us, but we still know how to sniff out that kind of double standard, and it doesn't fly very well. So if leadership really wants to change the culture, they have to start with themselves, and they have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And if they have unhealthy mental, emotional, or relationship habits, that's going to perpetuate through the organization. So leaders have to start with their own learning and growth and speak to the importance of it, and live it, and have that growth mindset, and be the change that they want to see in others. If they're just going to dictate it to others, well, you're back to square one, and you've wasted a lot of time and money and energy, and you've now registered your hypocrisy with your community. So,
yeah,
and you're missing out on your own opportunity for having a better life.
Thank you, Susanna. This is The Work 93.9 FM. If you'd like to join the conversation, I see we have a comment, which I'll read in a minute. You can comment on Facebook, where we're live streamed, or you can call in at 804-464-1089. We're talking about solutions for workplace engagement. I'm Allie Fisher, and I'm with Dr. Susanna Calvert. Looks like we have a comment from Lee, who asked why we should prioritize profit making over human needs. Is this just reality, or is the divine right to profit socially constructed? Light topics. One thing that I found really powerful about what you shared, Susanna, is the measuring of that which is easiest to measure rather than maybe that which matters most. And it sounds like if taking time to do something that is energizing, that it's a worthy investment to take time to do something that's energizing, that then makes it so that you are more productive, more creative, more engaged, more connected. And so maybe for this question, maybe it's that typically that investment of time and doing the right thing, caring for ourselves and for each other, leads to more profitability anyways. And so maybe it's not something we have to delve too much into. What do you think?
Oh, yes. I mean, it's good for productivity. It's good for PR for the community because um, our society is getting more and more interested in the social responsibility and the environmental responsibility and so forth. And so it's 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 good for business in so many ways. And and yeah, you're more likely to have a profitable business, assuming that that is the goal. I know that I feel Lee is right that it's socially constructed to put profit over people because that's our economic model, and unfortunately, we have taken it to the extreme. Um, like, I don't think profit is bad necessarily, but if we do it to the exclusion of all our other values, then it becomes, um, harmful and counterproductive. So, we develop coping mechanisms given the challenges in our lives. Like, for example, if I'm feeling inadequate or unlovable, then I might work really hard to get praise and recognition, and it seems like a constructive strategy until I become a workaholic and ruin my health, and I do it to all exclusion, and then I've gone overboard, and it's out of balance. And I feel, and this is just my opinion, that we have gone overboard with this all or nothing mindset about profit. And, of course, there's other economic models, and people in those countries have different values and priorities. And to the degree they are going overboard with that and in a way that's out of balance, it's probably just as bad as we are. So I feel like what we really just need is balance, because I also don't advocate for saying, and I can just hear people complaining because when you say we ought to do X, they go, oh, well, then we shouldn't do, A through Y. It's like, no, it's a both and. Like, we need to do both and we need to find balance. And so I don't want anybody to feel like, okay, workplaces are only places where employees do kumbaya and meditate and do bonding exercises, and to the exclusion of getting anything done. I mean, obviously that's not realistic, and I hope people aren't coming to that conclusion or making that assumption. But it's a both and that's where I feel wisdom comes in, is where we do not just do that knee-jerk reaction and think of this as an either or, and that we take the time and the effort and we get the input to find the beautiful innovations and solutions that are in the middle. And often they're not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but they're going to be better than spiraling the drain at either extreme.
Thank you, Susanna. You mentioned how important it is to have leadership buy-in for any initiative that's focused on holistic well-being. What does that look like? How can someone lead by example when it comes to shifting the culture of a workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I sort of mentioned earlier, like that the leaders need to walk the walk too. That means that in their own lives that they are creating balance and they are being healthy. And when they need time off, or there's a family priority or need in the family, that they say, I'm not coming to work today because my family needs me, or I just want to go to this game, or I worked too much last week and I need some time off this week, that they live and breathe that too. And they talk about their own learning and growth on this mental, emotional relationship axis that, that they talk about it. Like, gosh, I think about myself and when I was your age, Allie, and I've come a long way, and you're so much farther along than I was at that age. But I could also reflect on how I used to think and feel about things, and talk about my learning and growth, and how I've changed my mind about a lot of stuff. Like, I used to be one of those people that would just work myself to death. I had terrible balance. So it's one thing for them to live that in their life and be transparent about it in their personal and professional lives. I mean, without oversharing, obviously. But it's also another to say, okay, we're going to align our culture and our policies and procedures and processes accordingly. So if I'm going to, like, say I want to have life balance, but then I say to people, okay, we're moving up this deadline a month earlier and we're going to cut the workforce, and so you guys need to figure this out, just make it happen. We're not exactly living our values. It's sort of like folks want their cake and eat it too. So, you might not be able to imagine losing time to market or profit by doing that, but you're going to do that if you're going to be taking it out on the backs and the hearts of your employees. So what are some other alternatives? And again, I know this is easier said than done, but again, it's that I don't have the time to manage my stress or manage my schedule. So it can be some very hard choices in the beginning, and it can be expensive on the front end too. But again, keep thinking about how unproductive your employees are, how much turnover you're having, how much of a hard time you have recruiting people to your organization. And I feel like that cost needs to be factored into.
It's interesting, as a young professional with folks my age, both in grad school or PhD programs, or also in the workforce, I see a mentality often that there's this idea that you need to do your time, kind of earn your spot within an organization, or that, well, PhD and master's programs are just supposed to be really hard, and you're just supposed to stay up all night and then have to wake up early and work all day. And also the culture of, I guess, work hard, play hard, of working 60-hour weeks and then totally crashing over the weekend and feeling the need to stay out late and kind of take back your time that you didn't have throughout the rest of the day. And so it feels like this culture is so pervasive in every sphere. And so it is interesting to think about how important it is that it start with the leadership, because if it doesn't, since our current culture is so focused on this top-down approach and respecting those in positions above you, if it's not started by the leaders, then it'll continuously be kind of stifled. And that is just so concerning to me personally, as I watch people that I care about really struggle to make it through the phase of proving yourself. But I do wonder, for those who are not in leadership positions, and for those specifically in employee engagement and human resources roles, if leadership isn't on board, but they want to do something, what can they do without necessarily having that stamp of approval?
Yeah, so I think there were two main questions there, and I feel your pain about people paying their dues, and I feel like it's less about paying dues, although sometimes it can be made into that. as that there is also a certain level of competence and experience that is required before somebody can go into a role. So I'm just not sure that there's any way around that. And either the training needs to be longer, or or there is a phase of sacrifice, or some combination. I feel like what's often at heart is that the expectations are just so unrealistic that, and I'll just speak from the higher ed point of view, because what I often see is that the belief that we want the students to learn, these 1,000 things and do these 500 things. And we do it more out of insecurity because, oh my gosh, they can't possibly do this job unless they have memorized these things. Well, is that really true? So I feel like it's partly laziness on our side, like we're really not prioritizing the competencies, and we're just dumping things on people because that's how it's always been. And we don't want to have to prioritize what's actually most important, or to be able to customize the curriculum or the program to meet the modern need, and for that some individualization. So again, I don't think it's just like throw everything out and make it easier, but I also don't think it's just suck it up. I feel like there's a lot of reform that is needed, and there is going to be some sacrifice to getting to a certain stage of knowledge and competency. That being said, I also know from personal experience that the lift is much harder if what you're pursuing is not really right for you. So, if it's not aligned with your true passion and purpose and your strengths, it's just going to be pushing a boulder up a mountain all the time. And if it's that challenging and soul crushing, either the program is not right for you or the place is not right for you. But I feel like taking a hard look at, what is it you truly want? Because if you're really doing the thing you love and you're able to use your strengths to do it, again, it's that energy thing. And, or it could be just a toxic culture in which is very depleting. So that's an organizational fit to that person. So again, none of that is necessarily that, we are not taught that in PhD school, unless you're in psychology or vocational psychology or something like that. Most places don't learn that. So again, I feel like people should not be afraid to look for help and assistance, and hopefully ways that are affordable and scalable, which I think brings me to your second part of your question, which is what people can do if leadership is not totally bought in. So I feel like, there's always the grassroots movement from the bottom up, and there's always the middle management on up and down. So change doesn't always have to start at the top, but gosh, leaders, if you're not leading this change, why aren't you? But, we also don't have to wait for the leaders, because another truism is that, maybe a lot of the organization is pretty happy with how things are, but not everybody will be. So, you can take care of yourself and do what you need for yourself. And there are lots of great tools out there, and but it does take some time and effort, especially if your organization's not providing it. If you're the sort of person that, and I love the ones that just say, hey, I see a problem, I'm going to find a solution and bring it to the organization. Like those of you who are like that, go for it. I absolutely love those catalysts that are sprinkled up, down, and sideways, and you can create great change. and create a buzz. Or if nothing else, take care of yourself and the others of you who feel the same way, and be your own change. Just because somebody's in a position of authority doesn't necessarily make them the leader. And these leaders often act as if, well, I have this title, therefore I'm the leader. But we all have worked with leaders who sit there and really don't lead. They just hand off things and they let stuff slide, and they're not necessarily really leading. And this idea of a servant leader, the one who's actually creating the change and the support and enabling success and healing or whatever it is that is needed, those are leaders even more so in my mind. And there are great tools to empower leaders at every level to bring these cultural changes and these changes for health and resilience and well-being across the organization. And Foundation for Family and Community Healing was really, our products are really created for those people. They're the things that I needed when I was your age and not doing real well, and struggling and finding my way. And what I've really learned in my lifetime is that by allowing myself to spiral the drain, I eventually hit rock bottom, which is a terrible place to be, but it's also a beautiful place, because at least for me, when I climbed out of that hole, I learned a whole lot. And I've done that more times than I can count in my life, unfortunately, but also fortunately, because those lessons are what we are offering on our platform. And we have lessons from others like me or similar to me who've crawled out of holes and are offering the solution that they needed at that time. And so that is readily available, and it's designed to meet everybody's budget, and it can be done wherever you are, by yourself or in pairs or in groups, however you want to learn it. So we're not the only solution. There's so many books and podcasts, etc. But I feel like for these solutions to happen, we have to focus on skills. I'm kind of tired of this knowledge is power belief that we keep saying to ourselves over and over, as if reading a 2-page blog is going to change our lives. And sometimes they do, but with so many things, we have to do the work of creating that change in our behavior and our mindset and our perspective. And it's so doable and it's so learnable. But we have to take the time and the effort to do that, to learn it and to practice it and integrate it in our lives.
Yeah, I've been thinking about the concept of mental sticky notes, kind of, and it's when you get something so in your head through practice that it is just always there. And one example of a way it can be used is just with maybe self-talk. Like if you spend 5 or 10 minutes a day thinking about the negative ways in which you have spoken to yourself and throughout the day, and you very intentionally shift and create alternative language that is much more positive, it just sticks, it just stays. And it's that rewiring that takes so much time, energy, intention, effort, consistency. But it's a small part of each day, but it does have to keep going. And this is The Work, 93.9 FM. We are Finding Our Fit. My name's Ali Fisher. I'm here with Dr. Susanna Calvert. We're talking about workplace solutions for engagement. And if you would like to call in and join the conversation, the number is 804-464-1089. We'd love to hear from you. And you can also put something in the comments on Facebook Live as well. So I would love to hear more and share more about the process that the Foundation for Family and Community Healing uses for behavior change. And just as a brief anecdote for me personally, we have a module called Relationship Wellbeing, which talks a lot about different skills that we all would benefit from developing related to listening, communication, mindfulness, the benefits of being out in nature, hearing someone else's perspective. And one thing that has been really powerful for me, I'm actually going through my second time of being in a small group, going through the module. And I just find that the repetition and having reminders and conversations with other people who are going through the same sorts of behavior changes. There are different goals that we have in our group. One person wants to connect more with the people in their lives and reach out more in a social way, because that has fallen by the wayside. Another person has a goal about journaling more and getting more in touch with their thoughts and feeling like maybe they would like to be more aware of how they're feeling. Personally, I have a goal surrounding yoga right now and how that helps me to be more mindful. And we gather weekly to discuss how we're doing with these goals that we're setting. And so I just would love to hear from you as the creator of that module, what the process is for how these modules not only provide information, which is so important to have, but like you said, there are many blogs and podcasts and there's so much information out there, but how does that translate into actual behavior change?
Yeah, well, thanks, Allie, first for just sharing your experience with it and what you have found helpful and valuable, and the range of ways that people have responded. And so I feel like that's a very important part of these modules, is for people to find their own paths and solutions. It doesn't do much good to say, here's what you ought to do, these 20 or 30 things that worked for me, because it may not necessarily work for you. So after 26 years in higher education and a lot of that time being spent doing professional development work, what I have really found is that, we teach to the theory or the principle, but then we say, go apply this in your life. And so that the gap between the theory and the application might be one step, or it might be 100 steps. And so that just drives me crazy. It's just, it's such a wasted opportunity. And so I've become pretty anal about walking people step by step through these behavioral changes. And so what we do is, that knowledge is power only goes so far. So it's really knowledge plus skill equals power. And so we tell people what they need to know, like, what is this? Why does it matter? And how do you do it? And we keep that as brief as possible, because that's really all you need to know. And you can go learn more if you want. But then what do you do with it? And we walk people step by step. And it really starts with, okay, now that you know what this is, reflect. How does this play out in your life? Because unless we can see how it's relevant to our life, then it's just more information among the millions of things that are floating in your head that aren't doing you any good. So how is this apply in your life? What's working and what do you want to change? And so, there's reflection points like that. And then what do you want to do differently? Mm-hmm. So, and that you just go through that process as often as you can, like every day, if you can, or, just as frequently as you can, or, or more times a day than that. And it really only necessarily takes, maybe a 10-minute reflection every day, like, oh, what did I try yesterday? How did it go? What do I want to do differently going forward? And it's just that mindfulness, basically, that you mentioned, Allie, of just noticing and being aware, and then going, well, what might work this time, or that went great. I'll just try that again, or try it with this other person or situation, and that's how we learn. And it's not a quick fix because, for example, creating healthy relationships is a lifelong endeavor. You might get it figured out with one person for one phase of your life, but then that phase of life changes, something terrible happens, or you're with a different person. I mean, every relationship is different, and the circumstances from day to day change. So there's no figuring it out. There's just doing a little better each day. So we take that approach with as across our modules, and we encourage people to try it on, and if they want to jump around and try different lessons among different modules, like, there's no magic formula to the lessons that we put into relationship well-being. Do what's right for you, and what's most important to you. If you feel like you have, like, these lessons are not as interesting, or you've got it down, or not as important, then go to one that really matters to you. That type of learning where you see the immediate need and you can see some baby steps and baby progress is great. Like, that's how we learn, those little tiny baby steps each day.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I really value about our modules is how flexible they are, that you can do them from anywhere, that you can do them anytime. You can do them on your own, you can do them with other people. And in the workplace, I'm curious from your perspective what it would look like if someone were to use the modules, and I know this is not a good word, but we'll just say it perfectly. If a group, figured out that they wanted to go through the, say, Hearing for Healing module that we have, because maybe there were some communication problems within their workplace, and so they felt they would benefit from working on communication skills, what would be the best way to take that module and run with it in the workplace?
Well, we really believe in empowering workplaces to develop the capacity to do this on their own, and we would help. We can send people, but then there's sort of this dependence, which I feel is unnecessary. But we have basically a facilitate the facilitator model, where we find these folks that want to create this change, or they have the interest and ability, and we work with them to first, for them to be learners in going through a module first with our help, and they can develop their own behavior changes and get used to the flow of what the conversations look like, and how to apply it in their own life, get their own skills, commit to their own learning. And then eventually we start to hand over the facilitation of those lessons to them, and they could take turns practicing with each other, and they can get feedback, and so on. And so when they feel ready to start their own circle, then they can keep returning to this their own group, not only for their ongoing learning, but also for peer support. So if something comes up, then they can discuss it and help each other out. So we're basically helping, we're facilitating the facilitators to create a community of practice. And then anybody really, if they want, can facilitate. Like, there's no magic, there's no magic to that. Like, we're not expecting everybody to become experts. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's just keeping the conversation within certain boundaries so that everybody feels safe, and the right conditions for learning, and let the organization adopt it in the way that feels most organic to them. However, I feel like the leadership, needs to do it themselves. And what we often find, as you know, Allie, when we talk to organizations about this, they say, "Oh, we need it for us first." um, so, so, th- so it's really great for people's own learning and mental and emotional health and resilience, and to the degree that leadership is doing it as well, and offering time and space to do it, like snacks and that kind of thing are always great, or time off and facilities, and I don't know if small incentives um, could help support it. And it doesn't have to be a hugely expensive endeavor in terms of hiring facilitators from the foundation.
Mhm. I know how effective lunch and learns have been at my previous workplaces. And so I think, yes, small incentives and a little bit of support, and just one leader who is well respected and has a good relationship with the folks in a given workplace saying, "Hey, this is important to me." I think that kind of testimonial can be so powerful. And I've been hard pressed to have any conversation with anyone in any space about the work that we do and not hear that it resonates, and that I feel like everyone has things that are hurting them, that they recognize are behaviors or thought patterns or routines that are not serving them, and that they would benefit from addressing. I know that I do. And so it, I think, is something that would be beneficial for everyone, and the fact that it's so customizable to what a person, workplace, group decides is important to them, I think is such an important piece of it. So if someone were looking to plug in and learn more about us and learn more about our modules and what options are out there, what do you suggest?
Well, they can come to our website, healingedu.org, or they can contact either of us. I do want to say that one other approach is that these modules can also be used as training is not the right word, but workshop content, where an HR professional or somebody like that, or a teacher, a caseworker could simply just go through it with their learners. And so we do have training licenses, and it would be a smaller commitment as opposed to trying to get a sort of a grassroots thing going. So there are multiple ways to use it, but check us out at healingedu.org. And Allie and I would love to talk to you.
Absolutely. And if someone wants to go into the workplace tomorrow and do one right thing that would lead to more engagement or something positive, what would you suggest that someone do as a small next right thing?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna take a cop out and list two things. So I feel like being present is one of the most important life skills that we could have, and the second one is listen. Listen to your heart, listen to your soul, listen to your employees, your loved ones, listen to others deeply.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It was
Allie.
wonderful to listen to all that you shared today. And thank you for all of our listeners for checking in and hearing about this important topic related to workplace solutions. And thank you to Ron. This was Finding Our Fit.
Oh, believe me, I'm a hitchhiker on this train, but I hope to learn a little bit more about finding fit. 76 years is not long enough, is all I can say. I need a few more. So thanks for listening, folks. Don't forget, in between shows, you're supposed to continue finding your fit. It's a full-time job. And you might even help your friends on this one. All right. That's enough for me. This is WRWK, Midlothian, Virginia. And we are happy to bring our listeners the things that we actually can use in our lives. If you want to send us some love, go to our Facebook site, which is the Work FM. Find the contact button that goes to our PayPal link. You can give some money to Synergy. That's the nonprofit that runs WRWK, or you can go to our website, which is theworkfm.org, and you'll find a big old donate button there. Send us some love. We love y'all in advance, preemptively, unilaterally. We love y'all. So see you later next week, ladies. All right. And we